What's going on, Metropolitans? Today, Frankie Montas lets the world know he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks with a lat strain. It's not the long Mets thing you're thinking of, though. Plus, Steve Cohen, the owner man, goes on the Meet at the Apple podcast with some really cool, interesting notes about his vision for the team. We're talking about that on this edition of Mets Digest. What is going on, everybody? It's me, Flobo Boyce. I'm one half of the team here at Mets Digest, and I appreciate everyone for making this channel something to visit on that YouTube platform. Almost 4,000 strong are making a part of the community. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. You don't want to be part of that not subscribe crew. Be part of that subscribe crew. Be part of that 23.4% and growing. Like the video, but most importantly, it's the comments. I read those, positive, negative. I read everything. It was kind of rough during the free agent rumors season, but I got thick skin. I'm a big boy. I could take it. I could take it. But this is not a rumor, it's an actual fact in our first story of the evening. Frankie Montas, pretty much in that Luis Severino spot, the pitcher reclamation, the person that had a bad season, looking to try something new, have a new chapter, is going to be shut down for an extended period of time. And of course, injuries happen in spring training. To look at across the river over there in the Bronx, they have a couple players who are also injured. But it was kind of interesting that when Frankie Montas was announced as being out for 6 to 8 weeks, people were quick to say, lol Mets. I got reservations about that. Before we get into that, let's talk about the actual injury. Frankie Montas has been shut down for 6 to 8 weeks due to a high-grade lat strain. Mets manager Carlos Mendoza said that Montas felt some soreness following his first side session in camp last weekend. And after being evaluated by team trainers the next day, they decided to have him undergo imaging, which unfortunately confirmed the worst. The veteran now faces a long road to recovery, and he's headed to New York to receive a PRP. That's a platelet-rich injection. And that is unfortunate. You want to make sure everyone is good to go and to be as good as they're going to be in this long stretch with baseball season. That's why I love baseball, because it is a marathon. You know that. I know that. It is 162 games and 184, 85 days. Like it is a grind. So hey, look, if you're gonna get injured now, do it now rather than September. But you're reading the social media channels, you're reading the forums, everyone's kind of like, lol Mets, here we go again. And I understand that on some level. For as long as you've been a Met fan, whether it's one day, whether it's one season, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, you came across some disappointment. And either it's the 2022 collapse, or the collapse of the mid-2000s, or the Bernie Madoff thing, or the 87 Mets, or the 2016 Mets, or I get it. It's kind of like fun to be like, here we go again. But I say, calm it down just quite a second. Because we do have some other arms ready to go. A next man up mentality was something that was pretty much planned from day one. And unfortunately, Frankie Montas won't have a chance to start his redemption campaign because he is a reclamation project by most Major League Baseball standards. It doesn't mean we should write out the season or make a reactionary move like sign a free agent who hasn't been signed before. That aside, if we get done cease, great. But I'm saying, like, if we didn't sign some better, like, I wouldn't go and sign Quintana now, for example, just because Frankie Montas is going to be out for 6 weeks. Like, let's be real. But that said, Carlos Mendoza, as even keeled as it is, added on about his experience and his perspective of the injury. Shout out to SNY TV for this one. Quote, there is a reason why they're here, referring to the pitching staff and how deep and how many arms they have, Mendoza says. Quote, we have been talking about it all offseason. We know in order to get through 162 games, we're going to need 8 to 10 guys, and here we are. It's nothing new for us. Guys will step up. Guys will get opportunities. We feel good with the options we have, and that is super important because I think a lot of armchair GMs will say, sign someone. Carlos goes, hey, look, we're good to go. So before we get into the next steps, I want to know what you think about this. Frankie Montas is going to be on the shelf for about 6 to 8 weeks. Worst case scenario, won't have a traditional spring training season, but should be good to go at the top of the season. What would you do? Would you try to maybe flirt with some of the other invitees at spring training? Would you try to sign a free agent? I'm dying to know what you think. But as it stands right now, here's the rotation for the New York Mets. Sean Manaea is going to be pretty much your ace at number 1 and should be the opening day starter. Not confirmed, just me speculating. Kodai Senga slots in right behind him. David Peterson and Clay Holmes are also good to go as it is right now. But that bottom right corner, again, shout out to SNY for the graphic, is really what Mendoza is talking about. Tyler McGill definitely has experience. He was an opening day starter for Jacob deGrom. Yeah, that Jacob deGrom is a few short seasons ago. Paul Blackburn is coming back from his spinal leaking fluids issue over the last season. And of course, Griffin Canning from the Los Angeles/Anaheim Angels, who's also in the mix. So these are individuals who are our starting pitchers, who have experience, who can really slot in that 5th or 6th-man rotation while Frankie Montas is recovering, or if anyone else goes down. This is what we're talking about, having the depth. Now, I'm not saying Blackburn's an ace. I'm not saying Canning's an ace. I'm not saying McGill's an ace. And I also understand that in April, you want to be able to win as many games as you can to really wash away the face of 2024 season, how we were so ice cold there out of everyone's mouth. But at the same time, I do think either one of these guys can help us win 1 or 2 more games than we won last season. But that said, though, I still have a very high hope for Frankie Montas because there is an expectation for us to really go further in the playoffs. They were 2 games shy of the World Series. And speaking of expectations, Steve Cohen was on the Meet at the Apple podcast. By the way, if you haven't heard the Meet at the Apple podcast, it's pretty fun. A couple guys having a good time, just talking about the Mets. Very casual. I'm surprised the Mets allow such a casual podcast on the platforms. The Yankees would never. But Howie Rose, the Howie Rose stepped in to really interview Steve Cohen. And props to Steve Cohen for being as accessible as he is. I know as Mets fans, we want more from Uncle Steve, but I look around the Major League Baseball, I look around the 30 or so owners, and Steve is actually one of the more accessible ones, so props to him for that. But speaking with Howie Rose, who is undoubtedly one of the greatest, if not radio broadcasters in the Mets organizational history, is a damn good journalist. He really asked questions that were different, fresh, and evoking, but everything came down to expectations. The Mets, at least on paper, weren't supposed to do anything major in 24. Well, OMG and Grimace later, or Rally Pimp, or Seymour Wiener, or Glizzy Iggy later, if you want to be real technical, they were the talk of the town. So, of course, the expectations are high. And I know expectations can falter, because we were both there in 2023. After that monster 2022 season, 2023, we had all the expectations in the world, and the team just wasn't built up for it. So Steve Cohen had a chance to talk about what he's looking for in the next season. Shout out to Tom Hanslin for the transliteration. Quote, "I love it. The pressure." That means we're on to something. It means you're doing something well. Cohen recently told Mets radio voice Howie Rose on the Meet at the Apple podcast, quote, "Last year, we might have been a little bit of an underdog. And now all of a sudden, people are noticing, hey, this is a good team. And that's the way I want it. We want to come into every season with high expectations." That's sort of how I run my business. I have high expectations. I try to surround myself with the best people possible. We're always in a constant state of improvement, regardless. Expectations are expectations. But we got to go out and play, really look good on paper. But guess what? We have to play 162 games. And that, to me, is super important for a lot of reasons. One, you get the 2023 season. We had a good team. We had people on paper, but we didn't win the games. Two, the fact Steve Cohen is being as blunt as he can. Three, if you watch the interview in its entirety, he is all about the fandom. He understands that it's kind of cool, the environment Citi Field has, but he is disappointed that fans are not coming out to the games. Personally, I get it. There are too many times our heart's broken. We kind of watch at home on TV. It isn't the most fun part of town to visit, especially if you live out in the outer boroughs or on the island or in North Jersey. A lot of us stay home. But if you're putting this investment into the team to have a good product, the validation comes from people buying a ticket to see it. And so that didn't happen last season, so you know Steve Cohen's down to double down. But ultimately, you have to win the games. The Dodgers are the best team on paper, but the 22 Dodgers, the 23 Dodgers, the 21 Dodgers, went all far. They still in the division, but faltered in the playoffs. They couldn't win the games that mattered until last year. Cohen doesn't want to be that. Doesn't want to be a bridesmaid situation. Understand what's going on. And I gotta say, man, again, I love the transparency. I love how being forward he is with his team. And kind of how he Rose got to ask him this question is pretty awesome. Like really, when often you get one of the best broadcast journalists being able to ask the owner of the team really questions for what he does. I mean, it really was a treat. Check it out if you haven't already. Expectations are already running high. But what say you? Steve Cohen, expectations. Frankie Montas down. Would you sign someone else or would you ride with the hand that you have? It's spring training. I can't believe we're already here. The Mets are looking pretty good. Pete Alonso's back. Juan Soto's back. And, of course, we got the kids waiting for the chance to be called up. Let me know what you think. By the way, my name is Flobo Boyce, hanging with you on the Mets Digest channel. Thanks so much for rocking with me. And as always, it's LGM to the bitter end.